Hello everyone, this is Arrow, and welcome back to Sundown MHA Podfic. Today we'll be continuing Learning to Adapt to the Fall by Supupdog, Chapter 17, More Fluffiness. It was now time for lunch and Shota, his name is Shota. They didn't seem to mind him calling them Dad though, and even called him a fucking baby. Not going to look too much into that, Hawks, just don't look down that rabbit hole. Anyways, Dad refused to sleep and just kind of floated away all day. Fledgling recorded a bunch of videos for something, probably blackmail, and he had been giggling all day. Papa was being his normal self, just a bit quieter after they noticed that Hawks flinched at the loud noises. Hatchling also flinched with him, so it was probably a mix between better hearing and trauma. You kinda can't tell with two trauma-ridden birds of prey. Hawks was told that the nurse was going to knock when they come in with their lunch, and they did, luckily. He and his little bird were just startled and fluffed up most of the time while they gave them their food. There was some normal food for the complete human people, but some more birds of prey food for them. They also gave them some fruits and veggies because they are still human. His nestling was eating a little less now after almost 3 days since the quirk was used on him. Fledgling was still eating a lot, but it seemed like he wasn't in such a hurry to stuff so much down his throat. Plus, he didn't eat 13 whole fish this time around. Izuku ate around 12 and a half whole fish this lunchtime. At first, everyone told him that they were scared he was going to eat too much, but it seemed like he was burning a lot more calories than normal. Izuku eating less, even a little bit, means that whatever the quirk affected is starting to slow down. It's slow, but his fledgling will begin to even out his food intake, but there is also the fact that they don't know what he really needs to eat yet. Papa is helping Dad eat right now, and it's a sight to see. Just eat. Dad then proceeded to turn his head away from the spoon that the hospital soup was on, like a toddler. No, jelly. You're not getting your pouches. Papa looked really tired, but Dad seemed to want to finally pass out after so long. No. Hawks heard a snort from the fledgling as part of the fish hung from his mouth. He's really glad that both their stomachs are built for digesting bones and all, unlike their real-life counterparts. Imagining throwing up little bones and such is already giving him a headache. Izuku pulled the fish out of his mouth and looked up at him with a smirk. Can I get my phone again? Hawks shook his head as he took a bite out of his chicken. It's been 3 days since he never would have even thought of eating raw chicken. Only if you're okay with raw fish guts getting on it. This caused the little nestling to puff out his cheeks, and his wings fluttered a bit. Hawk's ears toned into a light buzzing as he heard when Izuku fluttered his feathers, but it quickly went away after the little bird stopped. He'll have to think about that later. Maybe he needs his wings preened again. Suddenly, the rest of the fish was thrown into Izuku's mouth, and hands started to rub on his shirt. Hawks pushed Fledgling's hands away as fish guts was now clearly rubbed into his shirt. You little dick, that wasn't even my shirt, it was one of theirs. Hawks pointed towards where the bickering couple was still fighting over Dad eating super jelly. Hatchling just shrugged his shoulders because his mouth was full of food and pulled out his phone with his now clean hands. He's a little troublemaker. That fledgling is nothing but trouble. Hawk shook his head again and went back to eating his food, watching the show. Just one bite, Shota, please. No, I want jelly. His hatchling leaned onto him as he recorded more blackmail on his pappy. Will Pappy actually refuse to eat it if he doesn't get his jelly? Hawks looked down to the little one, their eyes big but not all black, as they looked at him with an intensity that couldn't quite understand that well. I honestly have no clue. Please! No. You can probably use that as an answer, fledgling. Hawks runs his hands through their hair, feeling the feathers that are slowly growing in and the ones that are already fully grown. It was probably like that because the quirk sped up the hatchling's growth. Izuku's hair looked fluffy, but it felt scratchy. not like his own because it feels very smooth. It kind of reminded Hawks of those metal scrub balls people use sometimes for dishes. It's a bit weird because even his feathers have that weird metal scrub ball feel to them. They still act like normal feathers, but it must be something to do with his quirk, or just his mutation in general. Hisashi gave up after Shota was basically falling asleep finally, 2 hours after lunch. He tried to at least give him one spoonful before Sho passed out, but that wasn't possible. Hisashi kind of shoved the cold food to the nurse when they came around because he was so tired from the bullshit. The nurse just asked if there was anything that his husband wouldn't fight to eat, and he had to explain that he was actually just acting like this because of Archie's quirk. That was a fun talk to have. Hisashi flopped onto the nest by the two birds that were at the moment preening each other. Well, he guesses it's more like a lesson for both of them, one only doing it to himself and one never having wings until a few days ago. Hisashi was way more of an amateur than the little feather, but he said that the wing preening that he gave him was really good. He sat there watching them for a little bit, little tweets and calls back and forth with each other. Sometimes it seemed like one didn't know what the other was saying, and that again made sense because it seemed both repressed their instincts. They seemed to clear up any confusion quickly, too, so it could also just be a lapse in judgment on their bird word means, on what the bird words mean, like changing from English to Japanese for himself. Izuku tweeted something to Hawks, and he seemed distracted with trying to get some feathers to go the right way. It was a tweet call Hisashi heard a few times now, and Hawks always responded the same back. It was a really easy sound to make because of Hisashi's voice quirk. He also loved to whistle and such, so it wasn't that hard to do. He really only made the tweet back because Izuku seemed to be getting a little more antsy and worried about not getting a call back right away. Hisashi honestly doesn't know what the call is, and he can tell it sounds a bit deeper with him because he will probably have a lot more trouble with those really high notes that birds make. He can make them, but it'll probably hurt. After he made the sound, both birds looked at him with saucer black eyes and little head tilts, which looked so cute because they did it in opposite directions. Hisashi was a little worried if he somehow insulted them, but with how their eyes are, that shouldn't be it, right? He gulped a bit, but then both birds of prey, wings puffed up, and made those little calling tweets, this time obviously directed at him. Hisashi looked around a bit, feeling a little on the spot, so Sho was asleep, and the nurses never really go into their room unless they have to, and now both of his boys were looking at him with so much expectancy. Hisashi did the only thing he could really do and make that sound back again. He automatically got tackled to the ground, limbs twisting with both of theirs and wings of mostly viridian and crimson flooding his vision. Loud bird purring quickly followed, and then some hands in his hair, gently fixing and pulling out knots. Hawks was preening his hair while the fledgling tried his best to wrap both him and the little feather in his wings. Little Feather decided to help him, and now Hisashi is just sitting in the nest with one bird preening his hair and surrounded by warm, fluffed-up wings. It was very warm and made him feel extremely safe and content. Having Sho by him would make it perfect, though. Hisashi, Izuku, and Hawks stayed like that until they had their last meal for the day. The whole time they were intertwined with each other. Tweeting calls would be directed at him, and Hisashi would respond in kind. He still didn't know what it meant, but it had to be good with his response, right? Even with the last meal, they didn't leave his side, and after eating, they all slowly started to get more and more tired. Hisashi at one point noticed that he was no longer sitting up by laying down. He was very warm, happy, and surrounded by loud purring. It felt like he was back home waiting for Sho to come back from one of his patrols. Hard days where he couldn't stay up and fell asleep on the couch. Soon he was following how those days usually go too, falling asleep warm and content to wait it out. Here are some endnotes memes. Izu, is he gonna eat? Hawks, I don't know. Zashi, please. Zawa, no. The nurse trying to do her job. gets angry birds of prey glaring at her. Let's get cold food shoved back into her later, gets cold food shoved back into her arms. The nurse. I just want to do my job, man. Hawks. Dad. No, it's Shota. Hawks 2 seconds later. But still Dad. Zashi. I'm fucking done. Just sleep. Zawa. Just wanting jelly. But my jelly. Hawks preening Izuku's wings. Izuku making the child call to him. Hawks too focused with the bad feathers that just won't go the right way. Izuku getting more anxious at no response. Zashi, I can do it, does the parent call. Both birds of prey that are getting out of their instincts more and more as the days go by. Parent? Zashi. Oh my god, I'm being attacked by cuteness. Both birds. Do it again. Both now doing the child calls. Zashi still not knowing what those noises mean. Sure, fine, just don't make my hair into a nest. Parent callback. Happy birds intensify. Alright everyone, that is the end of chapter 17 for Learning to Adapt to the Fall. Thank you so much for listening, and I'll see you all soon. Bye.